Tyron Woodley was the UFC Welterweight King, defended his title 4 times against the best in the world, and possessed a right hand that could put a hole through a brick wall.
I am the greatest welterweight champion of all time.
He was the man who ended the legendary reign of Robbie Lawler in just 2 minutes. A man who looked like a physical god in the octagon, a perfect machine of wrestling and power. Then, Kamaru Usman broke his rhythm and Jake Paul turned him into a viral meme. From a dominant 4-defense title reign to losing 6 fights in a row across 2 different sports. A collapse so perplexing, so tragic, that it left the entire world asking the same question. How does a man with that much power simply stop fighting? Here's how the most explosive champion in UFC history became frozen in time, lost his trigger, and watched his legacy burn to the ground. To understand the tragedy of Tyron Woodley, you have to understand the specimen. Tyron didn't just walk into the UFC, he exploded into it. An NCAA Division I All-American wrestler from the University of Missouri with the physique of a bodybuilder and the speed of a sprinter. He was the chosen one, and for a decade, it looked like the prophecy was true. Tyron was a tactical genius, a man who fought like he was playing a high-stakes game of chess. He didn't just brawl, he calculated every inch of the octagon. He'd back himself up against the fence, inviting you to come closer, luring you into a false sense of security. And then he'd detonate. His right hand wasn't just a punch, it was a career-ending event. Look at UFC 201. Robbie Lawler was the ruthless king of the division, a man who had survived the most brutal wars in history against Rory MacDonald and Carlos Condit. Tyron walked out and ended the era in 122 seconds. 1 shot. 1 kill. It was a statement of absolute authority. For 3 years, this wasn't just a reign, it was a fortress. He shut down the karate of Stephen Wonderboy Thompson twice, surviving a 25-minute tactical nightmare in their first fight and edging him out in the second. He set a UFC record by stuffing 21 consecutive takedowns from the legendary Demian Maia, a man who could choke out a grizzly bear. He dismantled the undefeated next big thing, Darren Till, dropping him with a lightning-fast right hand and submitting him in the second round. By 2018, Tyron Woodley wasn't just the champion, he was a problem that nobody in the world knew how to solve. But while Tyron was winning, he was losing the world. He was a champion who felt perpetually disrespected. He felt the UFC didn't promote him like a superstar. He felt the fans didn't appreciate his tactical genius, calling his fights boring when they were actually masterclasses in defense. This friction started to change him. He began focusing on everything outside the cage. His rap career, his acting, his media. Appearances on TMZ. He wanted to be a mogul, a celebrity, a champ in the world of entertainment. And inside the cage, a dangerous habit was forming. Tyron was a counter-striker, which means he waited for his opponents to lead. But he started waiting too long. He became obsessed with the perfect shot. He stopped being the hunter and started being a statue. He was waiting for a mistake that his opponents were no longer making. The frozen Woodley was being born in the shadows of his own success, and the world was starting to figure out the blueprint to beat him. Just keep him moving backward. March 2nd, 2019. UFC 235. This was supposed to be another day at the office for the champion. Instead, it was the beginning of a nightmare. Kamaru Usman didn't fear Tyron's power. He didn't wait for Tyron to lead. He didn't give him the space to breathe. For 25 minutes, Tyron Woodley was bullied. He was pinned against the cage, his body crushed by Usman's wrestling, his face peppered with short, annoying shots that added up. And the most terrifying part, Tyron didn't fight back. He had the power to end it in 1 second, but he couldn't pull the trigger. It was like a glitch in the software. The chosen one was being dismantled, and he just watched it happen. He lost his belt in a one-sided shutout, losing every single round on every single scorecard. The world thought it was just a bad night, a fluke, a bad weight cut, a lack of focus. They were wrong. It was a permanent fracture in his fighting soul. The trigger that had fired so many times before was now jammed. After losing the belt, Tyron didn't come back with a vengeance. He came back with the more hesitation. Against Gilbert Burns, he was out-hustled for 5 rounds. A former teammate who knew the secret. If you don't let Tyron set his feet, he can't fire. Woodley spent 25 minutes backing up, hands high, eyes wide, throwing almost nothing. Then came the grudge match against his bitter rival Colby Covington, a man who had spent years insulting his family, his career, and his character. This was supposed to bring back the old Tyron, the man who would see red and destroy his enemy. But it was more of the same. Covington, with his relentless pace, dominated Woodley for 5 rounds. Woodley looked like a man who had forgotten how to fight. He was paralyzed by the fear of making a mistake. He spent 15 rounds in the UFC, 75 minutes of fighting, and barely threw 100 punches, waiting for a counterpunch that never came, because his opponents were too smart to give it to him. In his final UFC fight, he finally tried to brawl. He rocked Vicente Luque early. For 30 seconds, we saw the ghost of the 2016 Tyron, but the timing was gone. The chin was compromised. He got caught in a wild exchange, dropped, and submitted in the first round. 4 losses in a row. The UFC, the organization he once ruled with an iron fist, showed him the door. The chosen one was now a free agent with no momentum. Most legends retire when the UFC lets them go. They go to the Hall of Fame. They open gyms. But Tyron Woodley went for the payday. He stepped into the boxing ring against Jake Paul, a YouTuber who had turned the combat sports world upside down. In the first fight, Tyron had him. In the 4th round, he landed a right hand that sent Paul into the ropes. Paul was dazed, leaning on the ropes, ready to be finished. And what did Tyron do? He waited. He froze. He let the moment slip away and lost a split decision. Even in a different sport, the trigger was still jammed. The rematch was the final nail in the coffin. December 2021. The 6th round. Both men were tired. Jake Paul threw a looping right hand, the same kind of shot Tyron used to end Robbie Lawler's career. It landed flush in Tyron's temple. Tyron Woodley didn't just fall. He collapsed face first. The image of the former UFC king lying unconscious while a YouTuber celebrated over him went viral instantly. It was the ultimate humiliation, a tragic punctuation mark on a career that was supposed to end in the Hall of Fame. The chosen one had become a punchline. So, what happened? How does a man go from the most feared champion in the world to a viral meme? The answer isn't just about age. Tyron was still a physical specimen. The answer is the trigger. Tyron Woodley was a perfectionist. He became so obsessed with not making a mistake that he stopped taking the risks necessary to win. He became paralyzed by analysis. In fighting, if you don't take risks, you've already lost. He lost his killer instinct and replaced it with a rap career and a brand. He thought he could be a part-time fighter and a full-time celebrity. The sport, a jealous mistress, proved him wrong. But there's a deeper tragedy. Tyron Woodley wanted respect more than anything. He wanted to be mentioned in the same breath as Georges St-Pierre. And in his desperate search for that respect, he took fights that stripped him of the very legacy he had earned. He stayed too long, fought the wrong people, for the wrong reasons, and let his reputation burn to the ground. So how do we remember Tyron Woodley? Do we remember the man who was knocked out by a YouTuber? Or do we remember the champion who defended his throne against the most dangerous men on earth? The truth is, Tyron Woodley's legacy is a warning. He was a pioneer of the champ era, a man who tried to build an empire outside the cage. But he forgot that the empire only exists as long as you are winning inside of it. He was a dominant king who lost his way, a man who had all the power in the world but forgot how to use it. His story is a brutal reminder: evolve or disappear. Tyron Woodley stopped evolving, his mind became his own worst enemy, and the world moved on without him. Tyron Woodley was the chosen one until he chose to stop fighting. 19 wins, then 6 straight losses. That's the cost of staying too long. That's the price of a jammed trigger. But the cycle never stops. Another fighter once looked like a god, dominated his division for years, and then fell even harder than Tyron. His name was Israel Adesanya, and his nemesis from the past came to take everything. That story is next.